Okay, we're rolling.
Okay.
All right, this is an interview at Days Inn, Hicksville, New York. It is the 15th of March, 2005, approximately 10:30 a.m. Interviewers are Wayne Clark and Mike Russert. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Alvin Kravitz, 6/16/26. I was born in New York City.
What was your educational background prior to entering service?
I had already been in college. I had been in my first year of City College when I enlisted in the service. I was kind of young, but...
Okay, you enlisted.
Yes.
Okay.
I even remember, I couldn't find my dog tags, but I know my number. 12231049. Never forget that number.
I'm going to go backward a little bit. Do you remember where you were, how you heard about Pearl Harbor, and your reaction?
Oh, I was young, of course. I was astonished. I think I was listening to the Giant football game, and then they made an announcement that we would attack the Pearl Harbor. I must have been, if it was 1941, I must have been 14 years old then. And I heard it, and I was totally flabbergasted by the whole thing. But even at 14, I was very moved.
All right. Now you enlisted. Why did you select the Army?
Well, I didn't think anybody else would take me. My vision wasn't that great at that time, and never was. I had a lot of vision problems throughout my life, but I'm okay now. I had 15 eye operations, but now I see very well. Anyway, I wore glasses, and I didn't think that the Marines or the Navy would take me, so I enlisted in the Army.
Okay. Where did you? Where were you inducted, and where did you go for your basic?
I think I was inducted downtown, Whitehall, something like that. I went to Fort Dix for the first couple of days where they put me on KP, and then they sent me to Camp Hood, Texas, where I got my basic training and was then put into an outfit that was going overseas.
Okay. How long were you in at Hood?
Well, I guess I was there, basic training, what was it, 15 weeks, something like that?
Okay.
Seems like that to me.
All right. Now, you ended up in a tank destroyer unit. Did you receive any specialized training?
Well, I was put into a reconnaissance company. I was a replacement. The company was, the outfit was fully formed. It had been formulated, it was a National Guard outfit from Kentucky, West Virginia, and Tennessee. And they were getting ready to go overseas, so they found guys like myself, young kids, and they put us in as replacements. So I went into a recon outfit as a machine gunner. I was trained as a 605, that's my MOS, I still remember, 30 cal machine gunner. And that was my job. But although I was a 50 caliber machine gunner on the TDs later on, so on my discharge papers they wrote 50 caliber machine gunner. But, you know, it was both. I did both those things.
How'd you get along being a replacement, being a northerner with a southern, predominantly southern outfit?
I was an outsider. There's no two ways about it. I was distinctly an outsider. I was a northerner, northeast. I had been to college. I was the youngest one, and I was Jewish. And that didn't go over too well. So I had some problems. I didn't drink. I never drank. I still don't. And those guys would get looped at with 3.2 at the bar, you know, at the PX. And they asked me to come down, you know, try to be with them. I tried once. I had one bottle of beer. I couldn't finish it, you know. And I used to play the piano, and I studied. I was studying German when I was at college. And I'd read my books, which I still do to this day, as you know what I do for a living, you know. Anyway, so I was like an odd man out. I would not say that they were bad to me, but I was different, you know. At that age, I didn't fit in. I just didn't fit in.
So you were your replacement. You went into the unit before it went overseas.
That's correct.
Okay.
Then they sent us over.
All right. When did you go overseas? Do you recall?
January, I believe. It must have been, it had to be before January because the pictures that I have say January 17th. So it had to be a little bit before that. And I do remember coming in at Le Havre, France on the pontoon boats. Anchored pontoons, like the harbor coming in at that time.
Now, was that 1945 you went over?
Yes, it had to be at the beginning of 1945. It's a 10-day trip, if I remember correctly. And I was on company punishment. Because...
Did you get seasick at all?
No, and it was the best thing. Actually, I didn't do anything bad, but I had picked up a souvenir when we were in the States, and they did an inspection, and they found a souvenir in my bag, whatever the hell it was. And so they put me on company punishment, which means I had to work in the galley, which was terrific because there was good food down there. They didn't know they would do me a favor. So that's about it, you know. In retrospect, we're talking about 60 years ago.
Okay, so you landed in Le Havre.
Right.
Did you go into action right away, or?
It took a couple of. I remember sitting on these. What do they call them? 40. I don't know what the hell I used to have. 40 something or other for horses or for men.
48.
48. That's what it was, right? And they took us off, and we didn't. I still remember. We just stayed there on the cobblestone streets. It was raining, so we laid down in the rain with the tops, with our ponchos. We just waited for hours and hours, and they put us on the 48s, and we just sat there for hours and hours. And then they sent us to Chambord, was that correct? The port.
Yes.
I think that was correct.
Port, yes.
Chambord, right. And we did a cutoff action that trapped them as, I don't know, whatever it was. I was just a soldier, so I was a private, and I do remember they did that. And then immediately after that, after the Germans surrendered at that port, we were then sent up north towards the Belgium, Germany area. That's how I got my hands frostbitten, and that was about it. And then we kept going Germany, you know, all the way.
Now, did you have winter equipment with you at all, or?
I think so, but I don't know what happened. I must have lost my, I think I lost my gloves, and it was freezing. And, I still had to handle a machine gun, and I did that without gloves, and that's how my hands got frostbitten at that time. Which was, whatever it was,
Were you hospitalized because of that?
No, I wasn't hospitalized. They just kept going. They said, you'll manage. I don't know whatever it was, I managed. So I guess there were guys worse off than I was, I'm sure. But I also did not want to leave the outfit. I refused to leave the outfit. Whatever they meant. They had a field hospital there. I do remember that. And they were going to send me back, and I didn't want to go. So I stayed with my guys. Because if I was separated, I would not have rejoined them at all. I would have just been another replacement in some other outfit. And since I was in a TD outfit, I didn't want to, I don't know what they would do with me. I thought maybe they'd put me in an infantry outfit for all I know.
Yeah.
So I just stayed. And whatever it was, it worked out. I managed. I'm here today. So it worked out well.
You were in a reconnaissance company and then a machine gun operator.
Yeah.
What were some of your duties? Could you describe daily life?
Well, in action, we were sent forward to recon for the TDs should any German tanks be coming up. So it was when you're young, you don't realize what you're doing. You understand that. It was a very precarious situation, but I was young and stupid, and so I would just go out there. We would be in a Jeep. There was a three-man crew, the driver, the rifleman, and myself, the machine gun. Machine gunner was mounted on a tripod. And if we had to dismount and set up a gun action, they were supposed to help me. And I would, one guy had the barrel, one guy had the ammo, one guy had the body of the machine gun. And that's what we did, and we would set up. And then if the tanks would come and we'd let them know, we'd run like hell before we would get caught. And then the TDs would take positions to fight against them. We only had 75 millimeter, 75 millimeter, that was correct. 75 millimeter tank destroyer weapons and 50 cal. They had 88s. So, it was not a good situation.
Yeah, right.
And they were, from further away, they could fire at us. But the guys who were in the TDs, they were taking great chances, and I think they did very well, whatever the circumstances were. Very courageous of them.
You said that later on a replacement came in and he became a close friend.
Bernie. I can't remember his last name. Could have been Moskowitz or Schwartz or something like that. I don't remember his name. Silverstein, Bernie Silverstein, that was it. And he came into the outfit as a replacement. Somebody got hurt, whatever it was. And I had a friend. Finally, I had a friend. So they would put us both on whatever duties they wanted.
Now, where was he from?
He was from City College also.
Was he?
Yeah. So I really had a friend. He was about my age also. So we did okay. We managed very nicely, and we sort of covered for one another. It was a good guy, good guy.
What were your reconnaissance missions like?
Well, most of the time it was a lead for the company. There were 3 companies of tank destroyers, 1 Pioneer and 1 Reconnaissance, 3 Reconnaissance. So sometimes we reconnoitered pillboxes sometimes because they would block us off. And my job, one specific job I do remember quite clearly because I was really so terribly frightened, was I was assigned to fire upon the embrasures of the pillbox. Now I remember the Pioneer platoon would come back and they would set shape charges on the pillboxes to blow it down. My job was to protect them. So I had we all did. I had to climb, I guess it was about 1,200 feet, 1,200-foot mountain, but the other 2 guys left me. Whatever happened, I don't know why. So I'm a young guy, and I carried the barrel and the body and the ammo boxes. And I still remember they were banging on my knees because I had them strapped on me. I wore glasses. It was horrendous. And I was running, and I remember I was crying. I was really crying because I couldn't see, and I don't know what the hell to do. And I remember slipping on a precipice. I just laid there. I couldn't get up. I couldn't go back. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to dump my weapons because the guys were going to make the attack, and they needed me. So along came some guy, a sergeant, who I don't know who he is, or ever saw again. He said, "Here, soldier." He reached down, and he pulled me up. And I did my job. You know, I never saw him. I don't know who the hell he was even. I'm so glad he was there. And I did what I had to do, and I helped out, you know, whatever it is those fellows did. So it was very important that we covered for one another, because if I didn't do that, they could get killed. And I would, you know, it took me a long time to get back. They thought I got killed right away, because I couldn't carry the stuff, and I didn't know where I was, and it was terrible. But I made it, and that was good enough. That's the kind of thing we did most of the time. Sometimes at bridges, where we set up to make sure that we weren't going to get blown away, and we would go there as close as we could and set up the machine gun, and then we would call up the tanks, the tank destroyers, and they would come up and they would pass through. So that's the kind of stuff we did. And you know, when I say to you that now, in retrospect, I could never do that. I could never do that. I was also assigned to turret 50 caliber. I guess that's how the Army put 50 cal down there. Turret 50 caliber in moving up. You know, the battalion took 5 miles, if you know that. You know, I mean, we were spread out, and I was in the turret, and that, you know, that was my job in case anything came along, which I never expected. And then one day, we were attacked by a couple of Messerschmitts, and they came in so fast and so low, they strafed the column. And I was a 50 cal, so I stayed there, you know, I was fighting back and all that kind of stuff, and they went at such a fast sweep, they went right by, and then they were going to come back. I saw them down there, and they were coming back, and I took a look, I was the only one in the turret. Everybody else went into the ditch. I mean, in retrospect, it's funny today, but in truth, it was scary. But I just jumped off that TD, and I jumped in the ditch with everybody else, so when they came back, the helmet or whatever they blew up, I didn't care about that anymore. It's so ridiculous, you know, but that was another kind of work I did, and I never really, to be honest with you, saw anybody like personal that I fired at. You know the difference? You know, like maybe an infantryman would, but mine was always, as a machine gunner, it was always like a spot, it was a distance, or it was another vehicle, or a tank, or a position. So that's what I did. That's what I did. And then, I don't have any pictures of Nuremberg. It's very Germany. It's very interesting. I guess we were never able to take any pictures because it was kind of difficult. I do remember coming into Nuremberg, and I was asleep. I was always asleep, by the way. Anytime I could sleep, I slept. You know? And I slept in the front like this, and I do remember the traces going up in front that woke me. And I was so frightened. frightened. And we came into Nuremberg, and I do remember the sports plots where the big eagle and swastika were, and they blew that down, and we were in there. And the war was starting to come to the end. You know what I remember? As I speak to you right now, one experience. We were moving up together. The lieutenant colonel was a commander of the battalion. I was the first man behind a lieutenant colonel. I don't know why. Maybe because I was a recon guy, so I followed, 5 yards apart. And a motorcycle came up and told the lieutenant colonel something, and he turned around to me and he said, "Pass the word, the president died." And I was so shocked. I think that was April 11th when Roosevelt died. Must have been around that time. I'm pretty sure that was the date. And I said, "The president died." The president died, and we were all so taken aback. Although we had casualties and all that, but it was the president who died. That was April 11th. Mind you, the war ended in May. And then we kept going. So that must have been after Nuremberg, on to Czechoslovakia. And we kept going into Czechoslovakia, and that's when I have the pictures of the Sudetenland in there. And we went as far as we possibly could, and they said, "Stop, the Russians are coming." And the Russians were here, and we were here, and then we dug into the Sudetenland and stayed there on border patrol for 6 weeks. We didn't have anything. In fact, the pictures show that. We dug a pit, and that's where we cooked in the pit, and we dug a trench. I guess it would be a foxhole, but it actually really wasn't. And we got pine boughs. I still remember that. We laid them down, a blanket on top, and that's where we stayed and slept. And we did patrol duty. And our job was not to let anyone cross that border in Sudetenland. However, the displaced persons, and they were Jews, by the way, were coming across in trucks. And my guys, they didn't speak German. They didn't know the difference right away. They were going to shoot them. And I would not, I stopped. I was only a private, by the way. And I said, no, I could talk. And the people, I let them come through, and I interpreted. I could talk to the people, and then I would send them on to wherever they were going. But displaced persons would go, which I didn't know where it was. But they were either running away from something in Czechoslovakia, or they were running away from the Russians. I don't know what it was. I must tell you something that just occurred within the last couple of years. Where I live, like I know where you live, I live in Huntington, but we have our own condo area, 20 acres, and we take care of our roads, and I'm the president and all that. So the guy that takes care of, was resurfacing the roads, was Ethel, like Timmy Riccobini. I had a roller there with a guy, an older guy rolling, older, like myself. He looked so old. And I said to him, who are you? He says, "Oh, I'm Timmy's father." And then I said, "Oh, where do you live?" He said, "Well, I live up in Albany." I said, "Oh, what do you do there?" He said, "Oh, I'm with the VFW." I said, "Oh," I said, "Where were you?" He said, "Well, I was in Europe." I said, "I was in Europe too." He said, "What army?" He said, "He was in the 3rd." I said, "Oh, I was in the 3rd." I said, "Where did you go?" He said, "Well, we went into, France, Germany, and then we went to Czechoslovakia." I said, "Oh, I did that too." I said, "Where did you end up?" He says, "I ended up in Pilsen." I said, "I was in Pilsen." I said to him, "Were you in the square?" He said, "I was in the square." I said, "You remember the TDs that were there? I was behind, we were firing. Remember that guy that was firing a machine? The gunner up in the hotel, we were firing with the machine gun." He says, "I was right there." We were 25 yards apart. This was like 55. Amazing. Amazing. Well, after that, when they came to do our asphalt roads, they'll do anything for us. Amazing that after all those years, we were like 25 yards apart. And then we were in Pilsen. I do remember we drank beer in Pilsen. I think the war ended. Maybe I was in Pilsen at that time. It's a little hazy, but I think it may have ended while I was in Pilsen, and then we kept going to Sudetenland, or vice versa. I'm really not quite clear about that. But that was it. We stayed there for 6 weeks, and then they sent us back to somewhere in France. I don't remember the name of the place. And we stayed there for a while till they sent us back to the States.
Can I go back a second?
Yeah.
Did you ever have any contact with the Russians?
No.
None at all?
None. Never. Never. I did have contact with a lousy mayor or whoever he was in that Czechoslovakian area, and he was a German. They had displaced the Czechs and put the Germans in charge, and maybe I wasn't so kind, whatever it was, you know. He didn't have any empathy or sympathy for displaced persons. I wanted him to feed the people, and he didn't want to do it, you know, and I wasn't so kind. I had a pistol at that time, and I threatened him, and I would never do a thing like that today. But he did. He got some food together. These people were starving.
Yeah. Were you aware of concentration camps?
No. Only when those people came through.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that there was a concentration. None whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
None.
Did you ever see Patton?
No.
What did you think of him as a commander? I know you didn't have that much contact.
Frankly, I was just a soldier.
Yes, okay.
I really don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just did it. Whatever. My highest contact actually was my own battalion, where the lieutenant colonel was in charge. That's the highest I ever saw an officer.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, you know, it was direct contact with the sergeants and the lieutenant and the company commander, whatever his name was, and the lieutenant colonel. That's about all.
Yeah, okay. All right, so you went back to France.
And yes, we were supposed to go to transshipment for South Pacific, you know, because they were getting ready for that. I came home, had 30 days rest and recuperation. When I had jumped into that ditch, I had hurt myself. You know, actually it must have been a sprain or whatever the hell it was, you know. Today it would be nothing. But anyway, I came back and we all got rest and recuperation, 30 days. And I was limping. I limped for a while, but I was really okay. And I came to my parents. After Fort Dix, they sent us to New York. And I still remember coming into the harbor where the Red Cross was at first. It was very nice, and they gave us like donuts and milk and whatever it was. And then we left Fort Dix, came back to New York City, and I caught the train, Long Island Railroad, to go to Long Beach. My parents were in Long Beach. And I had a big duffel bag, you know, and I was carrying that, and I got a cab from the Long Island Railroad in Long Beach, where I was just the other day, and I pulled up to my parents' home, and they were all outside, and it was a very it was a very emotional moment, you know, to come home. My father, my mother, and my sister were there, and I unloaded my bag, and you know, they all grabbed me, and all the people. I was one of the first guys home, so a lot of people saw us there. And I wanted to pay the cabbie, and he said, "That's okay, soldier." He said, "That's okay, soldier." And I stayed there, and then I was sent to an armored school, and I don't know what they wanted. They wanted to make me an armor, a weapons man, or something like that. And then eventually I got out of the Army, and I went back to
Now,
school.
where were you when you heard about the dropping the atomic bombs?
I was home. I was in Long Beach, April 6th.
Now, what did you think of that at the time?
I said the war's going to be over. And it was. It was a matter of days.
Yeah.
And we were all so relieved because we all knew, at least I knew, that it was a transshipment. I mean, I wasn't such a hero that I was going to stay home forever. I didn't have enough points for that. At that time it was points, if you remember.
Right, yes.
And I didn't have the points, so I had to stay in the service for a while. And I was in Fort Knox, Lexington, Kentucky, and someplace else. I don't even remember anymore. And that's eventually I got out of service and I went back to school immediately.
Did you use the GI Bill?
Oh, I got, first of all, it was in the summer that I came out of the service, so I got, you know, the 52-20, I got $20
That was
a
my
week.
next question.
Yeah, I got $20 a week for, you know, $20 a week is a lot of money then. For a certain number of weeks, I was out in Long Beach with $20 a week, I was spending the money, and then I went back to City College where I got my, I had the GI Bill immediately, which was $65 a month, if I remember correctly. I didn't have any dependents, and they paid for everything. See, and you went, at that time you couldn't start to transfer, you had to go back to the school that you came from. So I went back to City College because I had already been accepted before, you know, before I went to the service. And then when I graduated from City College, I got, later on, I got a scholarship, a 4-year scholarship, 3.5 to 4 years. That's how I got my doctorate with that scholarship. I got a master's from Queens, and then a doctorate, which I used, or the scholarship for my doctorate, which I used for Hofstra University. And that's how I never paid for school. Never paid for school. Today, everybody pays today, but I didn't pay then.
Did you join any veterans organizations ever?
No, I joined Kiwanis for a while. I did some work with them. No, but what I do today, well, you know what I do today. I'm busy with the Civil War. And I belong, as you know.
So do you join a Civil War veterans organization?
No, not really. Just the North Shore Civil War Round Table, which I'm on the board,
Yes.
and I'm so happy with. And did you see my last article?
Yes, I did.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
So did you ever stay in contact with anyone that was in service with you?
Never.
What about the fellow from City College?
Never. No one. I'm that kind of a person. I guess whatever that is, you know.
Yeah.
I always went forward, including the tragedies in my life with the loss of my first wife and the loss of my second wife, not that long ago. But I have to go forward. If I don't go forward, I'm not going to live. I could never make it. So I guess I have the capacity to, not to forget, but I sort of shut down and then move ahead, you know.
How do you think your time in the service changed or had an effect on your life?
Well, you have to remember I was very young, 17 and a half, 17, something like that. I must tell you, it matured me. There's no comparison with a kid today, except the kids that are going to Iraq and the kids that went to Vietnam. You know, most of the casualties were 18, 19, 20 in Vietnam, and I think most of the casualties in Iraq are also that same age bracket as I was. So when I came out of the service and I went back to City College, I went back with all the other veterans. You know, we weren't boys anymore. We were men. We were really guys, you know. And I graduated from school. I went to work right away. I was in the business, and I think, of course, my youth, even as a child with my father and my parents, I grew up. My father gave me such tremendous responsibility as a kid. I helped my father when I was a child. He was in the chicken business. He had a market, and I helped him. I would go there and do things. You know, what could you do when you were a kid? You can't do very much. But he did such wonderful things to me. I took care of the money, and there was a lot of money coming in because it was such a busy place. And I would sort out the nickels, the pennies, the dollars, the quarters, and they had like a muffin bin. That's how I sort out the money. And then I would roll the money and I'd count the money. Then my father would recheck the money. And then, you know, those days were like $1,500, $1,800 receipts for the day. My father would take that money inside of a bank book, tuck it in my, under my, like a money belt, under my belt, and he would send me to the bank, which was a good 3 blocks away. I was so small, I couldn't reach up. I said, and they said, who are you for? I said, Kravitz and Fuchs, that was the name of the company. And I'd reach up and I'd give him the money like that. Can you imagine doing something like that? And my father gave me tremendous responsibility. I was so, you know, I never thought much about it. And of course, when I went into the Army, I immediately, in basic training, they made me an acting sergeant. You know what that is? And it's a nothing. That's 3 stripers so that I would do things, whatever. But I never really had any rank. The most I ever had was a PFC when I came back from overseas. No big deal. Wasn't important. But I was responsible, as I am to this day. I'm still a very responsible guy.
Okay. How about showing us some photographs?
Oh, gosh.
If you hold this one up, where and when was that taken?
Well, that was before we went overseas. That's my outfit, and I don't know if you can see it. That's my platoon.
Yeah, he'll be able to focus right in on you.
That's me right there, with my platoon. I don't remember what platoon I was in, but it was the Reconnaissance platoon. We didn't have a number. Yeah, that's me right there. And, if I may, that's me. I have to laugh when I show these pictures, you know that? That was me. And
Do you remember about when that was taken? Was it right after boot camp or?
yes, it must have been,
Uh-huh.
because look, I had a hat and I had
Yeah.
everything, you know.
Yeah.
It must have been after we finished basic training,
Yeah.
and they took our picture, and that's what I sent home.
Okay.
And I don't know what else I have here. Well, I have these other pictures from France and Sudetenland, but you know, that's really not that important. And what do I have here? Oh, may I show these?
Sure,
that was
sure.
a great one. Guarding the barracks.
Guarding the barracks, right upon me, with my carbine, because we didn't get M1s, we got carbines in those days. Isn't that a funny picture? I was skinny then, you know.
Now, whereabouts was that?
Fort Hood,
Okay.
Camp Hood, Texas. Camp Hood, Texas.
Okay.
That's my picture of myself there. And when I came home, it must have been fall and summer, because I had two different uniforms. I had a summer uniform on, and I had a winter uniform on. And that's what it was like. I think one's a barracks, and the other one was near my home with my friends at that time. And
Okay.
that's about it, the pictures.
Okay.
And then there's what? I got this old, let's see, that's some of the ribbons. The old ribbons. I don't know what happened to this, I don't know what it was. But that's the ribbons I have in the pictures, right there.
Okay.
And I can't imagine that I was a sharpshooter, but these are sharpshooter carbine and sharpshooter little medals of some kind.
The one in your right hand is the expert rifleman's badge. So
Expert!
you must have been an expert.
I am astonished to hear that. Expert! Well, I gotta tell my kids I was an expert. You can't believe that. I never thought, you know.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your interview.
Thanks a million. You gave me an interesting time to talk about this. I appreciate it. No end. You brought